千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we delve deeply into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. So let's go ahead and return to Tao Te Ching 39. What we have done previously, we started as usual with a section analysis, and we identified 3 different sections. And we marked all the characters that were repeating, helping us identify those sections. So you probably recall that the first section we identified spoke of attaining oneness. So we had many repeating characters here from line 1 all the way down to line 7, and they were all translated as attained oneness. So that allowed us to identify this whole thing as one section, talking about what happens when different aspects of existence attained oneness. Then, from line 9 down to 14, again, we're able to see many repeating characters from 9 to 14, so we're able to identify that as one section. And then you can see in the translation that the second section is all about what happens when you are lacking the benefits that oneness brings. So there's a lot of negative consequences, and we were able to get to this part in our discussion last time. We were able to complete section 2 previously. So that leaves us section 3, the concluding section for our discussion today. So as usual, before we get to talking about the details line by line, we'll spend about 5-10 minutes to do a quick recap. So previously in the Tao meeting, we began our discussion on 39 with the key to it all, with the key to understanding all of it. So oneness is the first thing that this chapter talks about. And the one key to understand this entire chapter is by understanding that when it talks about the sky, the earth, the gods, etc., these are the various aspects of existence. So from line 2 to 7, it's all about that. And the master key to understanding all of that is to realize that every aspect of existence is mirrored in you. All aspects of existence are mirrored in an individual. So these all represent certain things in yourself and your life. And when we decrypt it like this, it becomes clear. We came up with a table toward the end of that discussion to get closer to the meaning of the Tao Te Ching. And the way to use this table, if you recall, is that when heaven attained oneness, it gained clarity. So this is a way to say that when there's oneness in your mind, that is clarity of perception, clarity of thoughts for you. Another way to say it, you can flip it around the other way and say that when you do attain clarity of perception and thoughts and opinions and so on, then you can say that you have oneness of the mind, that your mind has attained oneness. You can say it either way. So same thing with tranquility. It says when the earth attained oneness, that it possessed tranquility, serenity, quietness, stability. So when you map that to you, it just means that when your heart, the emotional aspects of your mind, attained oneness, there is peace, there is serenity, there is tranquility in your heart. So just like before, we can also say that if you wish to attain oneness, you must have tranquility. You can also say it the way that Lao Tzu did and say that when your heart, and we also talked about home because home is where the heart is, when your heart or home attained oneness, there is tranquility. So it goes on like this for this entire table, and we went into that in great detail last time. As I mentioned, we also went into the next section, the middle section, section 2, in great detail as well. So for that, all of the lines are talking about lack, the lacking of the benefits of oneness. And the first example was that when we say that the sky is lacking in clarity, we're talking about dark clouds overhead. It breaks apart in the context of it seems as if the clouds are splitting up, breaking apart as the rain comes down really hard. So bad weather. So this is another way to say that when you don't have mental clarity, you too get fragmented in the mind, that your thoughts become chaotic. There's no concentration, focus, unity of thought. Your mind is going off in every conceivable direction. And this leads to poor choices and decisions, and that can ruin your life. So that will be a negative consequence. So again, we use the same table, but this time, instead of the yin and yang symbol representing order and balance in your life, there is nothing, because the negative consequence of the loss of oneness, the lack of oneness, the loss of oneness leads to the lack of benefits like tranquility and clarity and so forth. So the negative consequences in your life will be the breaking apart of heaven, representing a fragmented mind, the eruption of the earth, representing you erupting in anger, and then it goes on like that, the vanishing of divine powers is about the emptiness in your spiritual practice, and so on. So I think you get the idea. We went through this in great detail last time. And so we summarized everything with this slide. What have we learned so far? Well, you see the benefits of attaining oneness, and you also see the consequence of lacking the above, which is exactly what we went through in the two tables. Having seen this, we definitely get the idea that oneness is extremely important. So it behooves us to explore exactly what oneness is. Now, we started doing this last time, and we were able to get through the 3 different aspects of oneness, 3 different ways to interpret oneness. So I'll summarize all of them for everyone. Previously, we talked about how oneness can represent the totality of the universe itself. And the example that I used was the word universe. Seeing from a different angle, oneness can refer to our connectedness to one another. We're all interconnected. At the most fundamental level of reality, literally, we are one. So failing to understand this is to imagine, to hallucinate the separation and differences between people. So when we focus on the separation, the imaginary illusory separation among us, that is what leads to discrimination. It is what leads to us wanting to compare ourselves against other people. It is what leads to conflicts, friction, all the stuff that we don't want, all the things that are contrary to the Tao. Recognizing the oneness, we then realize that there's no need to compare. There's no need to imagine that people are out to get you, because they literally are you and you are them. There is a connectedness. Now, of course, not everybody sees it the same way that you do. You can still encounter a lot of people who insist on getting theirs while depriving you of yours. They are still mired in the illusion of separateness. When that happens, it is important to keep in mind that they still have a ways to go to learn lessons from life. What they do to other people, the negative things that they inflict upon others, they inflict upon themselves. Sooner or later, they will feel the lessons of karma. So you can just let that process unfold. It doesn't need to get in the way of you learning your lesson of oneness. Lastly, the important aspect of oneness that we talked about, the last one that we spoke of, was the one true path. So in this case, it's synonymous with the Tao, and the graphic that I use to represent that is as you see in the lower right-hand corner, a whole bunch of doors. And this is my way of representing how in life we all come up with a lot of different choices that we have to make. So which one is the best one? Which one is the best path? Now we know intuitively that there's got to be one that's the best. And there may be quite a few that are good enough. But the one is the optimal path for you. And even if we don't identify it exactly, we want to get close to it. So the middle of this slide that we looked at last time is exactly that. Lastly, oneness can be seen as the one true path, synonymous with the Tao. So the choices in life, which one is the best? Which one should I pick? And an example that I used is with the combination lock that you see here. We know from experience that there are many different combinations that you can try, but only one combination will actually unlock that particular combination lock. So the best path in life for you is similar. One out of many is the one. So when you have that oneness in your life, when you figure out the best path, then everything comes together. That's when you see all the benefits described in section 1, the clarity, the tranquility, everything. So Tao teachings can help you identify which one. So that brings us up to date. We are now here to explore the concept of oneness further, specifically in this last, what I feel is the most important aspect of it, which is the one path. How do you pick and choose the one path? Well, there are many different expressions on how to do it. The essence is very similar. I want to expose everyone to the different ways of looking at it, so you can, at the end of the day, you can come up with some takeaways from this talk so that it can help you find the right path. So one thing, couple of items that I want to note, that this whole concept is meta or self-referential. What do I mean by that? Well, this chapter is talking about the one, the oneness. The oneness that if you have it, all kinds of benefits will be derived from that. This one thing, the combination, the right way, the key is also what we use in the beginning of this chapter to decipher this entire thing, by recognizing that all the different aspects that it talks about in existence are just different aspects of you. So using that, we unlock the meaning of all the lines. And the other thing to talk about, the other thing to mention is that when you are comfortable with this concept and you incorporate it in your perception, you begin to see it everywhere. So something as simple as going online, getting into websites, you know that you have to type in your password to gain entry, to gain access to the website. Well, that password is the key for you. Like the right choice in life, consistently correct choices would be sort of a password that leads you to the access to the one true path in your life. So this is everywhere. You look around, so many things we do, there's a best way of doing it. There's the most optimal way. And then there are different ways that are advantageous in different aspects of our evaluation. So let's explore oneness of the Tao. Specifically, the question is, what about life? And what I mean by that is, what about your life? What about the life that you have to live, the life that you are living right now? There's got to be a better way than what you've been using, but what is that? So here's the way that I frame the question. What about the key to living your life? What is the one thing you need to know? The oneness you need to attain that will give you clarity, tranquility, all the benefits that you saw in the first section. So this all leads to mastery of life. How do I master my life or my destiny? How can I be the master of my existence? So here's the thing. Some people may say, well, there's no one answer. It's kind of like that, and yet it's not. There is one thing that is the key to it all, but it's an essence. That essence, when applied to different people, will show up in different ways. So no matter how it is expressed, it is the Tao, but it will manifest in different forms. So the answer provided by the Tao can be expressed in different ways and may appear differently. I'm going to say it will appear differently to each person due to personal uniqueness. What do I mean by personal uniqueness? Well, all of us gathering here today, you know, and I know that we've all had different life experiences. The differences that we bring to the table in terms of different perspectives, personalities, you know, I've learned different lessons from my life than the lessons that you've learned in your life. I have preferences that may be quite different, likes and dislikes, not different from yours. And we all have different opinions about different things. Sometimes they're the same, a lot of times they're different because we're different people. So that being the case, when the essence of the Tao is applied to you, when the idea, the concept of the one true path is applied to you, you're going to come up with something a little bit different. You're going to express it in a different way. However, when you see enough of these different expressions, you begin to get the idea, you begin to get closer to the essence. Lao Tzu himself expressed his take on it, on attaining oneness. And it's in the last section of this chapter. Now, what I thought is that I can also provide you with at least one example of how we can express the oneness of the Tao in a different way, in a different way than the way that Lao Tzu would express, because, you know, I am a different person than Lao Tzu. So my uniqueness offers me a different vantage point with which to express the Tao. So let me offer the following to you because I think it's simple and I think it's easy to remember. It's easy to recall to mind when you actually need it. So when it comes to life mastery, I think of the following formula. First of all, it is paramount to make a commitment, an absolute commitment to what you are about to do, to master your life, to master your destiny. And when we talk about commitment, it's all about discipline, consistency, day after day, sticking to the same thing. I have learned that whenever you commit to something, if it is a worthwhile thing that you commit to, it will bring its own rewards. It will be something that brings positive value to your life in proportion to the positive value that you provide to the world, that you project out to the universe. So I'll just use this talk as my example. I am absolutely committed to doing this talk on Sundays. And those of you who have been with me for many years, you know that for yourself. You've seen that for yourself. Overall, this is something that I've been doing for more than 20 years. So pretty much every Sunday, most Sundays, here we are doing the Tao, talking about the Tao. That is my commitment. When is it going to end? Well, guys, it's not going to end. It's my absolute commitment. This is commitment for a lifetime. So you are stuck with me. So that's the kind of commitment that I'm talking about. Commitment for yourself to stick to something. You don't have to do what I do, but you have to commit to what is right for you. You have to commit to walking the right path for yourself. So that is the first key, the absolute commitment. The level of commitment means that once you have committed yourself to it, that you stick to it for every day after that, for as long as you live. So it's not a lighthearted, frivolous thing to take on. This is very serious. This is life and death serious, because literally it's about the rest of your life. Next, you have to proceed with intention in your mind, gratitude in your heart. Let me break it down into two parts. When I say intention, I'm talking about the clarity of having the goals that are so clear that you are able to write it down, that you are able to express it in writing. So this is gonna be very different from the misconception of the Tao that we come across from time to time. So some people will take the concept of carefree wandering and then say that, well, it just means that we don't have goals. That's actually the misconception right there. In the Tao, it's quite clear. When you study the Tao Te Ching, it's quite clear the journey of 1,000 miles, the building, the tree, that eventually attains great status. These are all representative of goals. If you don't like the word goals, try using vision. Try turning dreams into reality. We're talking about the same thing. Bottom line question is, what do you want to manifest in your life? And why? What is the reason for that? That goes into your intention. Because you want to make sure they are your own reasons, not the expectations from someone else, not the expectations of society. So, as I said in the beginning, writing it down may help you clarify them. So that's intention. So the gratitude, there is more that I want to say about gratitude. I'm going to use mental imagery to help everyone hang on to gratitude. But gratitude, basically, for me, what it means is that there are so many things I can be grateful for in life. And I want to make sure that I forget none of it. I want to make sure that I remember all of it. And I constantly remind myself that I am very fortunate. I'm fortunate to be able to sit here and be speaking to you about the Tao. It's good to be alive. It brings me a big smile. So a little bit more about that in just a moment. So intention and gratitude. If you have clear intention, but a lot of resentment instead of gratitude, the formula will not work. If you are full of gratitude, but you are not sure exactly what you want to do, where you want to go, this formula will not work for you. You must have both. When you have both intention to do something and gratitude for what you already possess, this will lead naturally to number 3, and that is, it leads you to taking actions. And if you keep in mind the intention and gratitude every day, it will lead you to taking action every day. That is the key, because these actions, sustained over time, will lead you to mastery of the Tao. It's something that's built up day after day. Now, I mentioned there's an easy way to remember all this. You may not be able to remember these 4 things, but I'll show you an easy way to do it. First, identify the keywords in these 4 lines, and there are 5 keywords: commitment, intention, gratitude, actions, and mastery. Okay, those are the 5 things you need to remember. Now, even that may be too much. So let's isolate the 5 keywords. So again, those 5 keywords: commitment, intention, gratitude, actions, mastery. So the formula looks like this. When you have commitment plus intention plus gratitude, you end up with actions, which leads to mastery. So if you put it together, it is a formula that spells magic in reverse. So if you think about doing magic, quote unquote, in your life, you can use that as an acronym for these 5 keywords. And there is another way. So if you don't like the reverse, you can do it in the order of MAGIC, magic. You can do it in the magic sequence. It looks like this. In order for me to master my life, I must take action. I must do so with gratitude in my heart and clear intention in my mind. I will commit to practicing this every day. So remember it however you like, but this is something that I know from personal experience actually works. The results that you get will seem like magic to other people, but it's not magic in the sense that it's not supernatural. It's the most natural thing there is, which I call the Tao. So invariably, there will be questions that come up on how to apply this and what happens when you run into an obstacle. So I'll try to, let me see if I can cover a few of the potential obstacles. What if you get stuck applying this idea? Well, this can happen because sometimes a task or project or goal may seem too big. It may seem like it's beyond your capabilities. It may seem like it's something that for which you don't have the knowledge, the education, the experience to be able to handle on your own. Well, whenever it feels that way, I want to remind you that what we're talking about here, the attainment of oneness, is an incremental process. It's something that you gradually build up to over time. And here is another mental imagery that may help. Who is that? That is Greek mathematician, physicist, and inventor from more than 2,200 years ago. So several centuries after the time of Lao Tzu, this is Archimedes. And what he said, famously what he said was, give me a lever long enough and fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. And that's what this print is showing here. Archimedes moving the world using leverage. So the leverage part, I want you to think of the oneness of the Tao as your fulcrum. When you follow the Tao, you will be able to move your world. You will be able to do great things, some much bigger than you thought you were capable of. When properly applied, this is extremely powerful. So another question that I do get from time to time is, yeah, you know, Derek, I get that I should be grateful. There's a lot in life that I'm very thankful for, believe me, but I don't always remember. Sometimes I get into a negative frame of mind and I can't get myself out of it. What do I do? Well, the ancient sages would say the easy way to do it is with a mental imagery, is with something vivid that you can recall to mind. So with that, let me go to that question. What if you have trouble holding on to gratitude? You can have trouble because we don't always remember to maintain an attitude of gratitude. And why would that be? Well, because think about it, the world is full of chaotic changes right now. I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. There are numerous stress factors in life. All of them increase tension. All of them take us further away from the Tao. So how can we get back to the Tao? How can we get back to gratitude? Well, the following may help. I'd like everyone to imagine that you have a library full of books in your mind. Not a physical library, not physical books, a mental construct. A library deep in your mind, full of books deep in your mind. Each book contains your cherished memories. And what do I mean by that? Memories of, for instance, time spent with loved ones, time spent, quality time with family. In your memories, you have stored away great experiences and events. Maybe going out with friends, maybe birthday celebration, maybe visiting an amusement park for the first time, maybe a beautiful camping trip, hiking out in nature. It could be different for everybody. It could also be not something big, but small everyday sources of joy, things that you like, things that bring you delight, remind you how good life is. Again, it can be very different. You know, for me, it's raining at night, which I know is not the case for many people, but it's uniquely my own. It's in one of my books in my library. So imagine your own books in your own library containing these things that you know will bring you joy, things that bring you to the state of gratitude. So keep this in mind. You can browse through these books whenever you want. You can walk into this library within, turn on the lights, and look at the books, pick out the one that you happen to want to read at the moment, or just pick one out randomly, flip through the pages, relive a favorite memory. That brings you gratitude. Now, as I mentioned, we live in a chaotic world right now. It is so incredibly distracting. There seems to be so much negativity. Everywhere we turn, everywhere we look, So it is possible that sometimes you will forget that you have the books within your mind. When that is the case, you must also keep in mind that they're still there. They're always there. They never go away. They're waiting for you patiently. They're waiting for you with infinite patience. They're just books. They don't get impatient. So pause for a moment now and visit your library within. So I'm serious. I mean that as you are listening to the sound of my voice, mentally visit your library. Look at your books. Pause for a moment, visit that library, and initially, it may be dark because it's been a while since you visited this library, as when you left previously, you turned the lights out. But now, as you are in the library of your memories, you want to mentally turn the lights on so you can look at the books. Then it'll be time to spend quality time with these books. It could be any book that you pick from the shelves. Books that will help you rediscover all the wonderful reasons you already have to be grateful. And this may help you reconnect with gratitude when you forget how many reasons you have to be grateful. So I hope this will help. Now, we're done for the time being with the discussion on oneness. We will come back to it. It's an important concept. But we should probably also explore a few more lines in the last section of the Tao Te Ching. The last section is the concluding section. So it's important. We need to now get the take, the quote-unquote take, or the expression from Lao Tzu on attaining oneness. So remember, section 1 is about the benefits you get with oneness. Section 2 is about the negative consequences when you are lacking in those benefits that oneness brings. Section 3, the section we're on now, is about Lao Tzu's perspective on attaining oneness. So let's go ahead and take a look at this line by line. Line 15. Therefore, the honored uses the lowly as basis. So from here to the end of this section, which is the end of this chapter, this is the perspective from Lao Tzu on attaining the one. And remember, in the first few lines, it's 得一 in Mandarin. So when we talk about the honored uses the lowly as basis, this is talking about how attaining oneness is an incremental process, meaning that you build up. You build up from the lower levels. You have to go through the different levels until you attain the higher level, the high honor, the high attainment. So great thing is built from lesser components. So this line speaks to how the honored, which is the highly valued, is based on the lowly. The lowly are the building blocks that are of no great value in themselves, like a brick, but can come together in a synergistic way. You put many bricks together, you begin to build a wall. When you put even more of them together, you build a structure. And the structure can be a magnificent structure when you are done with it and it's all built from bricks. That's the idea. The honor uses the lowly as basis. The magnificent structure uses the bricks as the basic building blocks. That's what it means. Next line. The higher uses the lower as foundation. So this, you can tell, is a similar thought that follows the previous line. The higher uses the lower as foundation. So think about how everything that is high rests on the lower levels. So in other words, if you think about a tall mountain, the peak of the mountain depends on the base of the mountain. Without the base, there can be no summit. Or think about something that is not natural like a mountain, but man-made like a skyscraper. Without the lower levels of the skyscraper, the higher level, the highest level of the skyscraper cannot tower over the city. So the higher uses the lower as foundation. Whatever is high must have the lower levels as bases. So similar thoughts as what we have just explored in 15. So anyone who wishes to attain the oneness of the Tao must begin with the fundamentals and then build up level by level. So this applies to everything, not just the spiritual pursuits of the Tao, but also physical pursuits, intellectual pursuits, everything. You begin with the fundamental levels and then you build out level by level. If you are learning a musical instrument, if you are learning a different language, a foreign language, you must begin with the fundamentals. There is no overnight success. There is no sudden jump to spiritual enlightenment. Now, I think this last part is especially important for those of us who are spiritual seekers, because once in a while, we will come across people who claim to have that sudden jump to spiritual enlightenment. Well, I have to tell you, when I encounter claims like those, I am extremely skeptical. There has to be a great deal of compelling evidence for me to even begin to consider believing in that. And that's because I know how the Tao works. I know how reality works. Gurus who claim that they can give you instantaneous spiritual enlightenment, spiritual salvation, I would dismiss outright as common charlatans, frauds. So please keep this in mind as you explore spirituality. I think there's a lot of trickery, a lot of fakery out there, a lot of phoniness. And it's difficult to isolate to just the authentic teachings, the teachings that will actually work. So I want to keep this slide up on the screen as we take our mid-meeting break. So I mentioned that as we go into line 17, 18, we will be talking about the example used by Lao Tzu using the ancient rulers. So in line 17, Lao Tzu says, thus the rulers call themselves alone, bereft, and unworthy. So these are the terms in the original characters. You'll see those terms. So the last one that you see here, 2 characters, that is the unworthy. And let me explore that with you a little bit. So here's what Lao Tzu meant. During his time, the Tao had been studied and understood already for thousands of years. Now, not everybody understood the Tao, of course. Rulers, if they were wise, would have had a rigorous education in Tao teachings. If they understood the Tao, they would also understand that their high positions are dependent on those below, i.e. the people. So to signify their understanding on the importance of humility, they would use lowly terms to refer to themselves. That would be a way to express that. So of all these different terms, alone, bereft, and unworthy, the middle one, bereft, is the one that had survived the test of time. So 寡人, this is the same character that you see, the single character that's in the middle of line 17. You add 人, which is person, to that. This was the most often used during the spring-autumn period, which is right before the time of Lao Tzu, and the warring stage period, which is his time and also after. In addition to humility, it also expressed a sentiment similar to a modern Western expression. It's lonely at the top. So 寡, bereft, means that you are all alone, you are by yourself, you are just there, one person facing many. So it's an expression of the loneliness at the top when you have all this responsibility. Now, 寡人 was used during the time of Lao Tzu, and in subsequent dynasties, it's occasionally used, but not often. The next line, is this not using the lowly as basis? Is it not so? So this is to emphasize the second point that Lao Tzu wanted to make about the attainment of oneness. And the point can be expressed this way. The higher you go in your attainment, the more humble you must be. Now, when it comes to being humble, the rulers at the time of Lao Tzu did not always follow the practice that he describes here. So even during his time, it was more like a formality to refer to oneself. If you're a ruler, it was more of a formality to refer to yourself in those lowly terms. Not all rulers were educated in the true essence of the Tao. And those that were not necessarily taking that on as part of their usual practice. So then after that, in subsequent dynasties, oftentimes the rulers would use a different term which did not have the humbleness, the humility as a component. 正, it meant we, like the magisterial, magistic plural, we. If you listen to the Queen of England, she will oftentimes, when referred to herself, say we. So she may say, we are pleased that you can be here today. Something like that. It means that she, the Queen, is pleased. But we, because she represents England. So it's a similar context with this term, which does not have any of the humility associations of alone, bereft, or unworthy. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about this historical context. So moving on. Line 19 says the ultimate honor is no honor. Now this sounds like a paradox. Ultimate honor is no honor? What does that mean? Well, it's actually a very practical expression of practical everyday reality. Let me explain. So first of all, the human tendency is egocentric, which means that when you have titles, when you have honors, it tends to swell up the head, inflate one's ego. This is the typical scenario for most people. Tao cultivators prefer the opposite, to become ever more humble regardless of any external validation, praise, or hype. And that's what that is. That's what the external validation is. It's hype. So this can be used in our daily life. Like I said, there's a very practical aspect of it. So as you go about your exploration of the Tao and spiritual practices and whatnot, you can use this wisdom from Lao Tzu to look at the world, look at different people, engage them. So how do they approach receiving honors and titles? Does it swell them up? Does it make their heads bigger? Or do they remain even more humble? And that after a while, you can tell it's an authentic expression of humility. So people can be divided into those two categories, those who get even more egocentric and those who get more humble. When it comes to a Tao teacher, those who show arrogance, put on airs, well, you can tell they're far from the Tao. What you want is the opposite, the one who is down to earth, the one who's approachable, much more likely to be the real master. Now, the real master, of course, is not obligated to answer every question because even a real master is limited in the amount of time and availability. But the demeanor when they interact with you, rather than to place themselves above you, if they give you this warmth and this genuine impression that they are speaking to you, one person to another, that we are all fellow travelers in this great journey, okay, well, that would be the sign of a real master. Now we are approaching the last two lines of chapter 39. You may think that the last two lines will go by quickly. Well, in fact, there's a lot to talk about. So let's get right to it. Line 20 says, do not wish to be shiny like jade. This is referring to how Tao cultivators don't want to be shiny, attracting attention, don't want to be something that is a showcase or grab the limelight, something that is high profile and highly visible for everybody. That is the representation of Jade. Let's talk about Jade for just a moment. The character for Jade is the last character in this line, line 20. And that character is Yu. So it's an interesting character. It's the character for King Wang, which is the three horizontal lines bisected with one vertical line. That's King Wang. And when you have a dot in the king character, you get Yu. And this is because jade was customarily worn by rulers. It signifies power. The preciousness of jade signifies the absolute power held by monarchs in ancient times. And that is the usage in this line, something that is very precious, something that broadcasts, lets everybody know about the power that you wield. Now, this is contrary to the demeanor and practice of Tao cultivators. And that is because Tao cultivators feel no need to be paid respect, for others to bow down to them like a king. So they prefer not to project the image of power, regardless of how much power they actually possess. Even if they occupy powerful positions, they will prefer to still be down to earth and relating to everyone at the personal level. Why? As you can see here, they understand how transient power can be in the material world. As Tao cultivators observe the world, they see how power comes and goes. They see how powerful people come and go. They see how things come to an end when someone gets sick, dies, needs to transfer power to someone else, etc. So, power being transient and impermanent, it is more like an illusion. So, why hang on to symbols of this illusion, like jade? There's no need. Therefore, it is opposite to the preference of Tao cultivators to be like jade. Now, let's talk about the last line. There's a couple of important points to be made, and then I need to give you some examples to talk about this in more detail. So first of all, I want everyone to know that there are different interpretations to line 20 and 21. Now, I am not the person to ask about, hey, are these lines all, are these different interpretations all equally valid? I'm going to say no. Just like the listen in this particular chapter, there's one interpretation that's better than the others. And I'll tell you what that is and the reason for which I believe it's the better one. So, one interpretation is that line 20 and 21 tell us Tao cultivators do not wish to be shiny like jade or dull like rocks. So the meaning in that interpretation is that we should have some kind of practical moderation, some point of equilibrium between these two. Not show off, but also not dull like rocks, but something in between, a point of moderation. And that on the surface, it sounds reasonable because in the Tao, we hear a lot about practicing moderation. In this case, though, I want to take a stand and tell everyone that I don't believe that is what Lao Tzu meant. Here's the reason. The problem with this interpretation is that it does not flow from 15 to 19. This is all one unit, one section. From 15 to 19, it is talking about how the high call themselves by lowly terms, signifying humility. Okay, the high is represented by jade. The low is represented by rocks. The ultimate honor is no honor. Therefore, the last two lines really are the way for Lao Tzu to drive home the main point about humility, which is that you don't want to be showy, decorative like jade. You want to be low profile, unnoticed like rocks. You want to be humble, in other words. So it's the emphasis of humility that if you miss that, and then the last two lines, you suddenly switch from humility to moderation, well, it's not right. Now, as I pointed out before, humility itself is actually a practice in moderation. It is the point of moderation between two extremes. One extreme being arrogance. The other extreme is self-degradation, self-debasement. Humility, being humble, is the balance between the two. Being humble is not an extreme. It's a moderate behavior in accordance with the Tao. So the much better interpretation is to not be like jade, attracting attention, but be like rocks, keeping a low profile. So that is the nuance that I wanted to make sure everyone gets. And now I want to also talk about the importance of the last character here, rocks. Why is that the last character, which we customarily know from before, from our study previously, we know that the last character, the last line, tend to be the most important. So let's spend a little bit of time to talk about the meaning of rocks in the Tao. The Tao of rocks, if you will. So first of all, when we're looking at rocks, we already know that rocks have common appearance. They don't look like anything special, as opposed to something like jade, which has been carved into an object of precious value. Rocks are just rocks. So common appearance. You want to be like rocks in the sense that you don't want to show yourself as anything other than the ordinary. You want to have a very down-to-earth appearance. You don't want anything that attracts a whole lot of attention. So Tao cultivators who project that common appearance may actually be diamonds in the rough. It's just that most people would not be able to tell. So whatever their inner attainment, whatever their qualities may be as an individual, they will seem commonplace. So in other chapters, this idea is reiterated over and over again. So for instance, in chapter 56 of the Tao Te Ching, there's a line in there that says, dim the glare, meaning there's no reason to shine, there's no reason to show your brilliance. Oftentimes, people want to showcase their brilliance out of ego-based reasons. They want to showcase how special they are, how much they are above other people. Tao cultivators see the display of arrogance as also transient and illusory, and therefore there's no reason to engage in those. That's why you don't want to be like Jade. There's no reason to shine, no reason to attract attention. So that's number one. Number two, complete silence. Rocks don't say anything. Rocks stay quiet. And this is worthy of emulation for Tao cultivators. There's no need to shine, and there's no need to attract attention by being noisy, by talking a lot. Whenever you see someone talking a lot, they want to showcase how brilliant they are. They want to shine. So 1 and 2 are similar. And this is also expressed in other chapters of the Tao Te Ching. So for instance, in 16, which we studied some time ago, it says, holding on to the truest tranquility. In this particular chapter, you also saw that when you have oneness, you gain tranquility as a benefit. It's important because being quiet, quieting down the inner noise, that is exactly the way we connect with the Tao. So emulating rocks, meaning not having some sort of extraordinary appearance that attracts a lot of attention, not making a whole lot of noise that attracts a lot of attention, being more like rocks, plain and simple. Plain and simple, but practical. Now, when I say plain and simple, I just mean external appearance because people who study minerals know that hiding beneath the plain appearance may be a fascinating mineral that has great value, whether as a monetary object or as a subject for scientific study. So we're talking about like a Tao cultivator who may possess a great amount of wisdom within, but doesn't look like anyone special. So there's a little bit more to it. Another characteristic of rocks is that rocks are found everywhere. So we see rocks all over the place. We know that rocks don't hide from people. They don't go into hiding. They don't keep themselves away from anyone. This is expressed in that same chapter 56. It says mix the dust, which means being part of the world, being part of the community. For the Tao cultivator, it is an important study. It's an important teaching that you don't want to keep yourself away from other people. So the real study of the Tao is not going to the mountains and have become a hermit. That's not it. A real student of the Tao is constantly with the people to share the Tao, to teach the Tao, to learn from people about the Tao. So think about the difference between that and jade. Jade is precious, it's rare. So very few people are able to have that, especially in ancient times. Rocks are all over the place, and therefore it can be used by everyone. It can be a benefit to everybody. So in that way, that's just like a Tao cultivator. When you're part of the community, everyone has access to you. You can be of a practical benefit to everybody. Lastly, number 4, priceless. And people will think that I have gone crazy because what do I mean rocks are priceless? Rocks have no price because they're everywhere. Number 3, yes, they're ubiquitous. They are found anywhere, everywhere and anywhere. So people do not regard them as valuable. In that respect, it's sort of like air or water. And yet, you know, and I know, how precious air or water can be to someone who doesn't have them. To a deep sea diver, air is priceless. When you are running out of air, but still deep underneath the ocean, air is beyond price. Water, when you are in the middle of a desert, dying of thirst, water is literally priceless life itself. So just because they're normally found everywhere does not mean that they have no value. Indeed, the fact that they are regarded as not being valuable can be a hint that they are of the ultimate value. So line 19 in this particular chapter says the ultimate honor is no honor. In a similar way, the ultimate value is no value. So think about rocks. Rocks can be used as building blocks, can also be used as tools. You can shape them into various different tools that can be extremely useful. It is no exaggeration to say that we human beings would not have our civilization without rocks. They are so incredibly versatile and useful. So to be like rocks is to be priceless, is to be everywhere, not hiding from people. So with that, we're able to come to a conclusion about the last section that concludes chapter 39, when we talk about be dull like rocks. So the point is, don't show off, don't shine like jade. And by extension, what that means is those who attain oneness will not brag, and those who brag will not attain oneness. So from this right here, we can tell that humility is a necessary ingredient in the attainment of oneness. And the important point about that is that there's no suppression in Tao cultivation. There's no suppression of desires for flaunting. The reason why Tao cultivators do not flaunt is because we see how pointless it is. So there's naturally no desire to flaunt. The last statement that you see here, Tao cultivators will never say, you know, I really shouldn't show off. Instead, what Tao cultivators say is, why should I flaunt? Why should I brag? What's the point of all that? Why would I even need to do that? There isn't an actual need. So there's no desire to do so. Lastly, we're now able to summarize everything that we have learned in this section. There are 3 points that are all related about the attainment of oneness. Let's take a look. Number 1, as you saw, the high uses the low as basis, meaning the oneness of the Tao is something that you build up gradually. You start at a lower level, you go higher and higher until you reach the highest level. You build it up gradually over time. Number 2, the higher you go, the more humble you must be in your mental outlook. The higher your attainment, the more humble you must be, the more humility you must possess. Now, it's true the other way too, is that unless you possess more humility, you will not attain the higher levels. Number 3, which is, as I mentioned, it's related to number 2, and that is, there can be no flaunting in the process of attaining oneness. So those that need to flaunt, those that need to make a scene and attract attention, they will not be able to attain oneness. So to emphasize humility in the process of cultivation, whether it's spiritual or physical cultivation, I would like to tell everyone a story to illustrate that point. It's a story that I call The Chasm. So once upon a time, in ancient China, there was a young monk who studied the Tao and the pursuit of cultivation in this particular temple is both spiritual and physical. If you think about the Shaolin Temple, the monks study Buddhist Sutra as well as Shaolin Kung Fu. Same with this particular young monk, he was expected to attain mastery of the physical arts of Kung Fu as well as the spiritual teachings of the Tao. Now he was young, so he was constantly trying to show off. He liked to flaunt what he had learned to other monks. He would like to, he wanted to always explain what sutra meant to others, or if he had learned a particular skill, he wanted to demonstrate what he could do physically to the other monks. This greatly annoyed everyone, especially since he was still a beginner in both the spiritual and the physical pursuits. So with the sutras, with the teachings, he oftentimes made mistakes without realizing it. He would quote the wrong lines or explain things in a clearly mistaken way, but he wouldn't realize it. When he wanted to demonstrate what he had learned in Kung Fu techniques, he would often mess it up and fall on his face. That didn't stop him. He still wanted to showcase his knowledge and expertise as much as possible. But because of the way he was, the other monks did not really like him and didn't really want to become friends with him, they kept their distance. So his master, the old monk, had spoken to him about this to remind him, listen, you need to focus on your studies. You need to keep quiet and practice so that you can attain true mastery. If you keep trying to show off like this, it becomes an impediment. It will actually get in the way of you trying to attain the higher levels of Tao wisdom and the higher levels of Kung Fu expertise. Now, as I said, this monk is young. He didn't listen to the old monk. He still kept on doing what he was doing, constantly trying to show off. So one day, the old monk, his master, took him on a walk outside. They walked and discussed everything about what they had learned about life, and their walk took them to the chasm, which was a sizable gap, as you can see. So they wanted to get to the other side. So the old monk jumped from one side to the other, seemingly without effort. It looked like he just flew right across. And this was because he had attained total mastery of Kung Fu. He was very powerful. And to get across a chasm like this would be a great challenge for most people, but was not a great challenge for him. So now he's on the other side. He turns around and beckons the young monk to follow. Young monk looks at the chasm, looks at how deep it goes, realizes that a misstep would be catastrophic for him. So he's like, okay, master, give me a moment, give me just one moment. And then he backed way up from the chasm. He went way back. And then his breathing, he's hyperventilating, he's breathing in, he's psyching himself up to make the jump. And then he runs, he gets running start, and then he jumps across, and he successfully makes it to the other side. And he was stumbling a little bit, but he made it. He made it to the other side. Observing all this, the old monk asked him, do you know why you needed to do all that to get across the chasm? You needed to back way up and run full tilt before jumping to get across. Why did you have to do that? And the young monk says, well, master, it's obviously it's because my Kung Fu isn't quite sufficient yet. So when I back up like that and then run full speed, I can create enough power to be able to get across this chasm. The old monk said, what you just said right now contains deeper meaning in the Tao. Think about it. When you understand what you have just said, you will be able to develop yourself physically and spiritually far more than you have. So the young monk thought about it as he was told. And then he realized that whenever he tried to explain his understanding of sutras to other monks, he was, in effect, backing way up, breathing, and then doing a running start and then jumping across. He needed to put in a lot of effort to do that. Whenever he wanted to demonstrate what he had learned in Kung Fu techniques to the other monks, he was also, in effect, backing way up, breaking into a run, getting that running start, and then jumping across. Sometimes he succeeds in demonstrating a technique, other times he falls on his face. That's like not clearing the chasm. Whereas the old monk, his master, he had attained complete mastery, so he's able to jump across effortlessly without backing up, without that running start. That was the difference between the two of them. So finally, he understood what the monk had been saying all this time. So he changed his ways. He quieted down to study the Tao, to study the Kung Fu teachings, and eventually was able to attain great status in both the Tao and Kung Fu. So that is the story of the chasm. So I want to just make sure that everyone understands how to apply this to your life, and then we will bring the meeting to an end today. Let's explore the story symbology. Leaping across the chasm, what does that represent? And if you feel like you get the story, you understand the story, feel free to type it into the meeting itself, into the webinar. Leaping across the chasm represents completing a particular task in life. Now, this task can be big or small. It's an objective. It could be a project. It could be a major goal. It could also be a minor chore. It's something that you want to accomplish in life. Jumping across effortlessly, which the old monk demonstrated. What does that represent? Again, if you feel like you know the answer, don't let me stop you. Go ahead and type it in. To jump across effortlessly like the old monk means that you have attained true mastery. The old monk had true mastery of his Kung Fu. He's able to jump across effortlessly because of the power that he possessed. What if you don't have that power? So backing up to get a running start, which is what the young monk had to do. What does that represent? Okay, I can see that everyone is really getting the story, understanding its message. Yes, it represents a lack of mastery. When you lack mastery, you have to work much harder, make a lot more noise, and you feel that you need to show everyone, you need to demonstrate your knowledge, and what you can do, just like the young monk demonstrating what he had learned in the Tao and in Kung Fu to other people. When you've attained true mastery, those needs go away. Conversely, unless you get beyond your need to do that running start, you're not going to attain true mastery. So now, let's apply this to your life. Do you find yourself wanting to back up and get a running start sometimes, like the young monk? If so, that signifies your lack of mastery. You may say, no, I'm not showing off. I don't usually try to show off. But I would say, well, you got to look deeper. The answer is actually yes. If you ever felt the need to challenge someone to a debate, what are you doing there? You're backing up. You're getting a running start. You want to show everybody what you can do. You want to show how much you know more than the other person. So something to watch out for. All right. Time flies when we're having fun. So we now we're at the end of our meeting. We need to do the summary. The summary today is focused on oneness, which is the subject of 39. This is just a reminder of what oneness can mean. So remember today, we talked about oneness having 3 different ways that we can look at it. One is the universe itself, existence, reality, universe, the one song or the one verse. Then we also talked about oneness in terms of humanity, in terms of all of us, you and me. It's a different angle, but it can refer to our connectedness to one another in the most fundamental way. We are one. We are one despite our seeming separation from one another. When we understand that, we lose the need to compare. We lose the need to discriminate against other people or place ourselves higher than other people. It contributes to the practice of humility. Lastly, oneness can be seen as the one true path, synonymous with the Tao. So one way to get that oneness in your life is to think about some easy ways to practice the Tao, ways that you can remember. So I provided one example today with the acronym MAGIC. Laozi provided another take on it when he spoke of the need to accumulate, to build up, and the need to do it with humility. I'll have a lot more to say about that next time, plus the paraphrase. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.